Well, I didn't do that, so I can't encourage them to do that. Sometimes you have to get out. Maybe not for 10 years, maybe not for a month even, but you have to get out sometimes. We say that a child who has never eaten soup at his neighbor's house will always think his mother is the only cook in the world, and her soup the only dish in the world.
Before we finish tonight, maybe you have a treat for our viewers, particularly those in Togo. Maybe an a cappella to sign off on?
Africa Independent Television,
AIT, sharing the African experience.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us on Focus Nigeria this Tuesday. My name is Benga Aruleba. Glad to know you have joined us. Let me quickly bring you up to date on some of the topical issues that have dominated the polity in the last 24 hours. And I start with the one that affects every one of us: electricity tariff. If you have not heard the news, well, let me tell you that very soon, indeed, maybe by July, you shall be paying more for electricity, as the much talked about new electricity tariff regimes will come into operation. At a workshop on dismantling barriers to achieving the nation's power sector vision yesterday, President Goodluck Jonathan accused the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission of delaying the project and not doing enough to sensitize the public to the inevitable upward review of electricity tariff. The president also has some jabs for state governors who be accused of, yes, agreeing to the need for appropriate pricing of electricity, but still want to retain their popularity by not being forceful when it comes to the implementation.
Tariff, I think we've decided at 1st of June, but I'm not sure that we are having robust advocacy. And this happened to me when the governors, like luckily Governor Rivers State is here, all agreed about the deregulation. And so look, we have not informed Nigeria. In fact, at the time, I said I wanted to send a team to the states to work with the governors. I think Governor Ben with them suggested that no, if we do that, there will be conflicts in some states. So the governors will take charge. At the end of the day, by the day we announced the deregulation, almost everything was on my head. I'm coming amazing. I'm not saying you did not support, you supported. Everything was Jonathan. To the extent that House of Rep also have to meet on a Sunday to discuss it. It became an issue. At the point, some of the governors, I will not call the names, who participated in pressurizing me, started shifting back. But I said, well, I must, even if they will cut off my head, it's my responsibility. But all what I'm saying is that, look, you don't have robust advocacy. By the time we get to that 1st June, the civil society will come and tell us that they have never had you. Luckily, you're one of them, so it will be, it will be better, but we want enough communication so that we don't get to that 1st of June and say, look, Nigerians have not been sufficiently informed, let us add 3 months. Ordinarily, the deregulation would have commenced early in 2011. Ordinarily, supposed to have been February 2011 or so. Of course, that is why there is this controversy whether we budgeted for it or we did not budget for it. The 2011 budget only made provision for 2 months because we are to deregulate from about February or so. This is still the controversy now. So I wouldn't want a situation where we get at that point and we start shifting. Please, Amadi, you are a very strong character. And you and your team must make sure that Nigerians are properly informed and that we are not shifting from that 1st June.
We don't know who we are going to hold responsible here, whether it's our good friend, Dr. Sam Amadi, that the president has put on the spot, or the governors, or the president himself. But one thing is clear, well, I said July there, it's actually June. So be prepared to pay more for electricity, maybe from June. Now with this presidential directive, a lot will happen. Many of them not palatable. Invariably, perhaps only those of us who have meters we end up being at the receiving end of this policy because we have no choice really. The millions who don't have meters and so many other millions who don't even pay at all, including government agencies or those who easily reconnect after being disconnected, will not suffer much. But not so for those of us who are already metered. The matrix scheme will definitely not be completed before June when this policy takes off. And again, are we going to be paying more for darkness? This chicken and egg jigsaw has been resolved against we, the people, by presidential fear because power generation is still very epileptic. Yet, we'll be paying more. Paying more for what? Darkness? Dr. Amadi, I don't envy you at all. Anyway, let's move on to something else. The Lagos State government has taken its battle of which is striking doctors to a notch higher. But they sacked the over 700 striking doctors, and accordingly, it has advertised their jobs. We hear that about 300 or so have already been employed after the doctors were sacked. The process of recruitment is continuing. Now, the question is, will this effort by the Lagos State government break the incessant resort to strike by the Lagos doctors? Well, from here, too early to say. All right, our last review, let's take you straight to the House of Representatives, where the much delayed, much talked about probe of the capital markets resumed and got to a high gear yesterday with the testimonies of the Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, Ms. Aruma Ote. Ote's submission covered events leading to the sharp decline in market capitalization from 12.6 trillion naira in March 2008, dropping to an all-time low of 3.9 trillion naira by February 2009. The running battle the SEC had in raiding the Nigerian Stock Exchange under the leadership of Dr. Mrs. Okereke UK. The activities of wonder banks which defrauded Nigerians of huge sums of money, and of course the profligacy of the Nigerian Stock Exchange under Dr. Mrs. Okereke UK, who spent over 1 billion naira on travel expenses, bought Rolex watches, I don't know who got what, but millions of naira to buy Rolex wristwatches, and all of that. All right, let's just take you to the House Committee sitting yesterday and take a little bit of the presentation of the DG of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Ms. Aruma Ote.
There were incidences of financial scheming, misappropriation, false accounting, misrepresentation, and questionable transactions. For instance, the Nigerian Stock Exchange bought a yacht, or should I say boat, for 37 million naira and wrote down the book value within 1 year by recognizing it in its books as a gift presented during its 2008 Long Service Award. Yet, there are no records of the beneficiary. The Stock Exchange also spent 186 million naira on 165 Rolex wristwatches as gifts for awardees, out of which only 73 were actually presented to the awardees. The outstanding 92 Rolex watches, valued at 99.5 million naira, remain unaccounted for. We believe that the kinds of market abuses that we had from 2006 to 2009 were ones that really break trust. And we believe that they are important. Let me share a few that were uncovered by the SEC investigation of intervened banks. I believe the DG of the central bank talked about AfriBank. So in the interest of time, I will focus on just two examples. What happened in FinBank and what happened in Union Bank. In FinBank, between August of 2006 and December 2008, the executive team of FinBank engaged 6 law firms to incorporate 95 companies and transferred more than 25 billion naira of depositors' funds to 9 of these companies and used those funds to purchase 2.8 billion units of its own shares. This was, of course, in violation of SEC rules. But they also used some of the other companies to sell those shares. And so this is one of those examples of what fails or creating the false sense that there is some activity in your store. And of course, all of this is prohibited by the ISA. Let me now give the example of the things that happened in Union Bank in 2007. In 2007, Union Bank borrowed amounts totaling 30.4 billion naira from 2 foreign investment banks. These funds were transferred to Union trustees, which in turn transferred the funds to Falcon Securities. And I give this example knowing that earlier in the public hearing, one of the honorable members had said, why aren't you telling us about Falcon Securities? In 4 days, in November 2007, Falcon purchased 620.4 million units of shares, worth about 30.8 billion, ahead of the planned public offer / rights issue. In 2007, Falcon Securities carried out 181,088 transactions with respect to just Union Bank shares. This drove up the share price of Union Bank stocks.
All right. That was the highlight of yesterday's sitting of the House Ad hoc Committee that is probing the capital market. Now we are getting to hear what we should have had long ago, what actually happened to the Nigerian capital markets. We are hearing all of that now, see how all of that keeps unfolding in the House. As we can see, it's been an action-packed 24 hours, and the next 24 hours promises no less. So, what are we discussing this morning? Okay. Has donor funds become slush funds that our government officials and civil society bodies now see as easy money not to be used for the causes for which they are meant, but to be spent on wrong causes without much regard for accountability, or just to be pocketed? Many believe, yes, this is the unfolding scenario. The National Assembly, for example, believes that this is true, as the House of Representatives, for example, is very concerned about the implications of this on our image as a nation. Nigeria gets close to perhaps more than 30 billion naira in global fundings, either to non-governmental bodies directly in some few instances, or directly to governmental organizations. Indeed, since the return to democracy, foreign donors have shifted attention to governmental bodies funding some of their activities. In some cases, these global funds are targeted at addressing issues affecting the ordinary Nigerian, such as initiatives to tackle diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, to promote general awareness in some cases, sanitation issues, and all of that. Now you can see that these are altruistic motives. It is therefore not a cost to share if there are reports that these same funds that are meant to address issues affecting the poor people are being diverted into private pockets or being mismanaged one way or the other. Just how entrenched is this problem? How endemic is it? What are the implications on our image as a nation? How do we tackle it? These are some of the issues we'll be discussing shortly. So stay with us for the discussions. Let's take a quick break to usher in our guests this morning.
We want a good Nigeria.
People that are benefiting are the IOCs. Why? Because they have a tax regime, a royalty regime that was framed over 42 years ago.
Stay with Morocco. Surely.
Explore Africa.
Encounter Africa.
Engage Africa.
Enjoy Africa's compelling,
Exciting
and breathtaking
experience
with Kakaki,
the African voice.
All right, if you're just joining us, the discussions are coming up now. Let me quickly introduce the guests. Honorable Esame Ibo is joining us for discussions this morning. He is the chairman House Committee on Donor Agencies and Civil Society. But in the House, he represents Eket on Ibeno Esit Eket Federal Constituency.
Federal Constituency. Esreket.
Okay. Federal Constituency area of Akwa Ibom State. Good to see you.
Thank you.
He's a ranking member of the House, really.
Good.
All right. Professor Ken Ife is also joining us for discussions this morning. Professor Ife is of African Business Roundtable. He's also a consultant to ECOWAS, DFID, that's the Department of Foreign Investment and Development.
Yes, right.
That's a British
International Development.
And of course, he's also a consultant to the World Bank as well. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Honorable. Okay, the House hearing. This is something that should have taken place long ago, but thank God that we are back to track now. Well, at the end of the day, what hope do we have? Will it not join? Will the report not join the growing list of reports coming from the House or from the National Assembly, and nothing happens?
Well, one thing you want to have to appreciate first and foremost is that donor agencies and civil society committee of the House is at the instance of the leadership and the membership of the House, realizing that it is a very critical element. The issue of donor, its effectiveness is very critical to our national planning. And of course, the roles of the civil society in an emerging democracy like ours is also very germane. In the heart of it, we also went a step further, other than having a statutory committee to now oversight this aspect, which used to be neglected, though. Really? We found out that it's a window that could be engaged properly to opt, the ante of governance, and also promote, the very issue of international best practice that the House came up with that. But
so the committee itself is novel. This is the first time in the National Assembly?
No, it was in the 6th Assembly. Okay. It was made in the 6th Assembly. Okay. But the present leadership of the House came in and gave it a bite, knowing too well that, in the previous Assembly, the emphasis was so much on the issue of appropriation and oversight. But you realize that from the oversight and the appropriation, we came up with the unspent funds, which was very popular in the 6th Assembly. Okay. Now, the current leadership and membership in the 7th Assembly found out that while the oversight was going on, and of course the unspent funds was the new lexicon in appropriation, that there are other windows of opportunities for corruption, like the issue of foreign assistance, aid coming into Nigeria, which in most cases will create room for duplication, which in most cases will not be accounted for, which in most cases will also undermine both national security, which we will explain that to you later, and also the issue of national planning. So to that extent, the leadership of the House now decided to add more flesh to it and give it more responsive and responsibilities to be able to tackle it. You did put something on the table here that I hope is not going to go the part of others. Why has not?
Yeah. But have you started the public hearing on that?
No, that's what I'm trying to explain to you, the difference in this one. I came up with a motion on the floor of the House on this issue of harmonization of receipts of aids and assistance in Nigeria, which the House unanimously now said that we should engage, in the parliamentary investigation, public hearing in that respect. But what is different from the one of Donor Agencies Committee and other committees is that so many persons are involved, for so many entities. For example, there are some elements of diplomatic issues involved. There are international organizations, which of course, if it's not handled with care, it could create some kind of diplomatic breach. So there is need, therefore, for some elements of tact, some element of level-headedness to be introduced. It's not something we should be born out of legislative activism. And it is not something that, you just jump into it and do a media trial on it. It is something you need information at both ends, at the end of the partners and at the end of the recipients. And when you are able to collaborate your information and get to the details, now you now begin to do the engagement. The feedback from this engagement will now be sufficient foundation to now be able to launch out and get to the bottom of it. But right this moment, we've done that engagement extensively, and I want to thank the leadership and the membership of the House for giving us the opportunity and the support. And of course, some multilateral organizations, bilateral organizations, and even the INGOs have been very, very cooperative, both internationally and locally here. So to that extent, we'll be able to build up data, we're able to build up our consent. So the the organizations, who are engaged in most of these concerns we are raising, we'll bring them up. And the essence is not, as a matter of fact, to consider ourselves into courts, but is, of course, to assist in raising the building of the institution in compliance, in accordance, with the international best practice as espoused in the Paris Declaration of 2005-2006, in the Accra Agenda for Action of 2008, which of course has clear principles anchored on alignment, on harmonization, of mutual accountability, and of course the issue of ownership, and clearly to make sure that there's going to be results.
Okay, I think the objective here is to ensure that those who are giving the money, the donors, get value for what they are giving the money for. And the beneficiaries to actually use the money for the purpose for which they
beyond that too, it's also to guide against duplication. Because for example now, if it is appropriated in our national budget, 1 billion, maybe for something like buying shirts for SMA and Benga, okay? Then Professor Ike now decided to send money outside the country now for the same purpose. There's going to be duplication. So there is tendency, therefore, for Mr. A to use the money.
Or for the two of us to just pocket the one we appropriated.
We will use the one from Professor Ike now to buy the shirts, while the one appropriated in the budget would not be used for a buffet. So it's clearly, what we are saying is that Professor Ike should be able to harmonize that donation with what is there should be country alignment, there should be harmonization. So all the parties should be aware of it, not only for the sake of duplication, it's also going to promote corruption.
All right, I'll come back to that. Professor, again, let me start from a period review. When we talk of donor funds, just what is the net worth of donor funds?
Well, just about 1% of our GDP, and you just put your finger on those figures. But I want to commend the House for the work they're doing on diligence, and to say that is the right way to go. But I wasn't blown apart. I wasn't blown away by the revelations from them, because here we have two sides of a coin, and we are just on one side of that coin, and we need to. It actually throws up serious issues about information asymmetry and the need to bridge some information gaps. Now, most of the donor funds and resources operate through a framework. In the case of EU, Cotonou framework, the IDA framework, and the real question is, how are we enabling our own institutional framework within those? That is, National Planning Commission, yes, is the national authorizing officer for most of this. But what is the capacity within the institutional framework that we have that enables us to draw down and work with these partners? And the answer is that we are falling behind. Now, what is the portfolio? Who are the portfolio agencies that are handling this project, and what are their capacity? Again, you come back to the same answer, that we are falling behind. And that is the story that runs across the whole regime. Now, he talked about the concept of aid effectiveness, which is predicated on Accra Declaration, the Paris Declaration, and the Accra Accord. Yes, those make for harmonization and alignment and strategic alignment of donor strategic priorities with Nigerian priorities. But where are our own institutional framework for delivering on this? I'm supporting the Trade Facilitation Task Force of the country, in which position I was, my position is DFID, a trade advisor to the Nigerian government. Now, that is a framework of 25 MDAs that are actually working with all the development partners, and we have a single strategic national action plan for trade facilitation, in which all the activities are captured. You have just one plan, and are working through this plan. Now, where is this sort of methodology replicated anywhere in ECOWAS? None. Where is it replicated in other areas in Nigeria? None. Now you begin to talk about how ready are we to fully engage with these people and disburse. And I hope I can see where money is given, because I don't know where money is given. Money used to be given under budget support. Now nobody wants to do budget support anymore, and I don't advise them to do budget support. And why would you do budget support? Look at the budget discipline in the country. You go with your budget, they give you an envelope. And then you come to spend, or the actual budget implementation is 50-60%. And then you have issues like that was brought up by the fuel subsidy, where you budget 250 billion and you end up spending 1.73 billion. Nobody will advise, you will not advise any foreign government to put their money in budget support. Although World Bank is now beginning to talk to some states and see if they can deliver on some governance condition, then they might now give them some budget support to spend on their priorities. But that is a program for them, and I have made it clear the risk that they are taking. But if some states can do better than federal government, so be it, and they should be encouraged. Further down the corridor, you look at things like contribution agreement. If you're using contribution agreement or project financing, they have totally different audit standards and pure strong institutional framework right behind them. Like if you have like World Bank CADAP program, where the disbursement is not really ours to disburse as such. We have a strong framework where you have to deliver your procurement plan well in advance. That is agreed. And then you have prior review or post-review. You don't have prior post-review in most of the purchase of goods and on maybe small consultancies, but most of them are really by prior review. So those steps that you have to take in advertising, in expression of interest and shortlisting, and in inviting for tender, the tendering, the closure of the tender, and the selection process, all of those stages are subject to prior review. So they are agreeing with you, and then they give you no objection. Then you make that step. So I don't know where all this
all of these.
Let me finish. I can see where they're coming from. And if the House does have reasonable doubt about the integrity of some of the spend, fine, share those with the development partners because they have rigorous audit regime. Share them with them and you can get more information. And of course, we also have Freedom of Information Act. We have a whistleblowing policy. So they're all perfectly within their right. And over and above is the oversight function. Within your right to probe this and that, but to create sensationalism and go to press, it's not where you're going to sort it out because some of those donor agencies, as you rightly pointed out, there are diplomatic issues around us. And then there are, so it's not, even when they want to help you, they won't do it in the
But the problem really here too is that the donor agencies too are also raising the alarm that some of these funds have not been spent wisely and all of that. We get to that.
But I'll come to that. Let me tell you where.
But I just like Honorable. Maybe
let me finish that. Then Honorable will round up.
There are so many issues you announce.
The donor agencies are buying outputs. That's why you have result-based planning all the way. You have output indicators and they are buying outputs. If you say to them you are going to do X, Y, Z, they want to know what their money is buying. So are they buying how many businesses are going to be supported, how many employments are going to be created, how many square feet of space are going to be refurbished, how many kilometers of road are going to be. They are buying outputs. And if you deliver the output, you get paid. They don't just give you money. There's no such thing as give you money. No. They buy outputs. And that discipline is missing in our national life, where you are focused and targeted and you are buying specific outputs.
All right. We are trying to align two incongruous systems here. Yeah. Our national system, budgeting system and public expenditure that is not of international best practices. We want to align it with an international best practices that is, I mean, you know.
But I want to really bring one information to the table, which may be very useful to all of us here. What the professor is saying is okay, but he's saying in general terms, because the multilateral, bilateral INGOs are all falling within the umbrella of these donor agencies we are talking about. You can say so, as he's saying, about about multilateral organizations, about bilateral organizations like the DFI, the UNICEF, and the rest of it. But as we speak, there are a lot of INGOs that cannot fall in that umbrella of due diligence. So, now, this thing is like equity. Whoever goes to equity must go with clean hands. And the Paris Declaration, we've both agreed on the principles of effectiveness. It's on the table. I don't understand why, in this country as we speak, there are a lot of INGOs, there are a lot of countries funding one project or the other in several parts of this country without the knowledge of the federal government, without the knowledge of the national planning, without the knowledge of anybody. They just go to those places and begin to execute those projects. And what is the
if they are doing so through civil society?
Now, the point I want the point I'm trying to express is that there is an international best practice. It is a country. Nigeria is a country. The issue of harmonization is not just for the purposes of accountability and the issue of result and ownership. It also has something to do with national security. Because if you go to your village now, you go and see maybe 3 countries, having one borehole here, another hand pump here, another one here. 3 different countries. National planning is not aware. The federal government is not aware. The Federal Minister of Water Resources or any of those agencies is not aware. The intention is not because they so love their community. They are simply conducting demographic intelligence. Because I can tell you at the end of the day, every gift, if I offer you lunch now,
there's something
100% benefit of that lunch is not because you are hungry. It's just because I want to persuade you into obliging me something. So whichever way you want to look at it, there is no free gift in Freetown. Even in Freetown, there is no free gift. And now, when you are now also saying this thing, I agree totally and completely that we don't have institutions. Our institutions are collapsed, largely because of the poor leadership recruitment process we have all talked about over time. Putting wrong people in right places and getting the right people to put in wrong places. And once we begin to have mirror of such situations, the institutions generally will be weak. But some of these persons, some I'm saying, some are very genuine, some take advantage of this. I also want to understand, like he was talking about the advertisement, bidding process, the contract administration process and all that. You said you have given Nigeria 1 billion naira, maybe for sanitation or any of these programs. Which period, duration, is going to be 4 years. The first 4 years, the first year of that project, expatriates have moved in. They start drawing allowances and salaries. They started living in a hotel. They start driving their 4-wheel drive and all that. The second year, they are studying the projects. They say they are doing project study. The third year, they advertise. Meanwhile, the expatriates have collected salary and allowances and the money they are expending on that project for 3 years already without the project starting. By the time the contract is finally awarded, it's on the fourth year of the final year of that project. What happens to that money? But what you have in the International Data Bank is that Nigeria has been given so much amount of money. But you won't hear that most of that money has now been returned back. If it has not been returned back, where is the money? Where is that project? We are having litany of these cases across the country. I quite agree clearly that we've not done well as a nation. But that is not to say that because we have not done well, somebody who's supposed to assist in developing me is now coming to take me one step into the pit, which of course is going to take several steps to come out of the pit. We are operating the project support system instead of the budget support system. Prof said they will not want to support the
national budget,
the project support system. Yeah. I don't have a problem with that. But what I'm saying is that if a particular institution or a developing partner wants to engage through the process of project support, that should follow the international best practice, which we've all agreed on. I need to know what you are giving me the money for. We need to see the results.
Yeah. Shouldn't that be an issue between the donor agency and the recipient, the beneficiary? Why would the National Assembly want to bring it and capture it within the budget? Because that's
we are not saying that National Assembly is saying that it has
because to be for example, if an agency of government, for example, is proposing to spend a particular sum of money, maybe on rollback malaria, for example, for a period of 1 year, and then somehow Global Fund came to the tune of probably half of that. Will National Assembly, because we are aware that that agency is getting external support, will you reduce what that agency is asking for?
What we are saying here is
because if you do, that means tacitly you have already captured it.
What I'm saying here is that if a development partner, chooses to give assistance to the Federal Ministry of AIT for the purchase of transmitters, and that the transmitters has already been captured, has already been provided for in the national budget, there's no problem about that. But the Mr. A, the development partner A, who is given either in technical assistance, which of course has monetary value, or in the money to AIT, must be able to do that through the national system, the local system, the local support system. National planning is our desk. They should be able to capture these things. They should be aware of it. We are not saying that bring it to National Assembly. That's not what we are saying. Because by the time you do that, when I'm going on oversight to Federal Minister of AIT, the transmitters that AIT bought with the money which was provided in the budget, I am not aware of the money either in the equipment or otherwise gave to AIT. So if the money was given or the equipment, the transmitter was given to AIT, I'm not aware. By the time I come to AIT, you show me the transmitter that this is what I bought from the money you provided for. I will go that budget implemented. But only to turn around again and be told that transmitter you saw was not even bought from the money provided in the budget. That it was Mr. A who gave AIT that. But if there was harmonization, if there was buy into the country system, if all of us were to be on the same page, we engage, we will be able to understand that, and the oversight will become very simple.
Okay, Prof. I think that's simple to understand, but my worry whether it's as simple as that, because the layman interpretation of that would just be that the National Assembly is just trying to put his mouth where his money is not.
No, that's not correct. That's not correct. The issue of appropriation or the responsibility of the legislature is not just to begin to look at the issue of money. You have to make sure that, because this money given or this technical assistance given to the Federal Minister of AIT is not for the purpose of Federal Minister of AIT, it's for the Nigerian people.
Okay, and it doesn't compromise.
By section 4.1 of the section 4.1 of the National Assembly has the legislative powers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and whatever is doing in the name of that oversight is acting within the purview as provided by the extant provisions of the Constitution.
Well, I see to some extent where he's going, but I also take into account what he just said. I do not support the notion that from the case of development partners who pay the piper quality too. That's not true. That doesn't even come in at all. We have every disbursement is under a particular framework, and as mentioned before, in the case we haven't signed the EPA agreement, so that can come in. So we're still talking about cotton. And the issue for us is we have a national planning, the national authorizing officer. And that overlooks...
for us, who are you speaking for now?
No, even for Nigeria. For Nigeria, we have national authorizing officer, which is National Planning Commission. And National Planning donors don't come in here and disburse money or do things. They have to go to the National Planning Commission. It used to be split into two. All the financial ones go to Ministry of Finance, but they all come down now to the National Planning Commission. And the issue that I keep raising is, where is our own institutional framework for working out with these people? And that is where we will fall down completely. We don't have, whichever we haven't got capacity. And then I ask the second question, where are the portfolio agencies that are supposed to be helping us? And where you identify one or two, where are the capacity? You see how all this issue coming down. And then you come to the way the monies get spent. Okay, I come back to the Paris Declaration and all that. And I said, yes. That's great. They all signed up to it, both the Paris Declaration and the Accra Accord. And they're all very eager to work with, the development partners are very eager to work with us on those bases. But where is our own institutional framework for implementing that particular aspect of donor effectiveness? Where is it? And I gave you an example of what we are doing in trade facilitation involving 23 MDAs in the country, central bank, customs, all of those. And I'm leading those. And I told you how we have worked. We have all the donors around the table. They are dialoguing with us on our own strategic priorities. We have a national action plan built for this country that resonates with what they... So we have it, and we're working towards it. And they pledged $150 million. So we're monitoring those, we're delivering, and we have all the answers to the question that he's raising. But the issue is, where else is this happening? It's not happening elsewhere.
So now when you come to elsewhere, that means there's so much capacity to be built.
Absolutely. And even those programs where we have Nigerians taking part, we still don't even have the transfer of the competencies developed in those into our management of a national development program. But you don't have that. And he said it is having square holes.
Is that when you expect the National Assembly to focus its abilities?
Yeah, but no, it's okay. I thought you wanted to...
Yeah, I thought that because of what he has raised now, the capacity of MDAs, and even... because I also take it that civil society also come under this. The capacity to utilize donor funds to specification is what I think that's what Professor raised.
And there is provision for that and they don't come in.
But I think the way I understand Prof, excepting I am stampeded into conviction, that is in general terms. I'm seeing Prof talking about specific items, maybe looking at the multilateral, which of course I confess here that they are doing quite well. The multilateral are doing quite well. Without necessarily considering to the fact, I have also stated here...
And bilateral. DFID is bilateral.
Bilateral and multilateral. I said here in the beginning. But you can't say so of some INGOs. I repeated. Repeatedly, there are some of the INGOs who are not doing what they're supposed to do, which they feel a lot of gaps to be addressed. That's one. Then number two, when you want to look at these things, I have said here and admitted repeatedly that we have issues of institution. And we have both agreed here that the weakness of our institutions, of course, is occasioned by poor leadership recruitment process. Wrong people in right places.
That's right.
We've all agreed.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, where do we go from here? Do we continue to take this march to the precipice? The answer is no. That's what he said. Now, if the answer is therefore no, and is otherwise, what steps do we have to take? The step must be collaborative. The step must be synergized. That means the development partners should therefore be able to now look at the country system and see. The third is the issue of the procurement. The procurement system. I know there are a lot of these international financial institutions that have, of course, undertaken appraisal of our procurement system. But as we speak, up till now, the result of that appraisal has not been made available to government institutions, which would have also be a step toward strengthening some of our some of these gaps. That's one. Then number two, most of the INGOs, I keep repeating, there are some organizations in this country with possible and of course likely terrorist tendencies. And it becomes very difficult for you to know this. It's becoming a mirage. It's becoming an issue for the securities because assistance, it may not necessarily be technical, has not been harmonized. Receipts of this assistance has not been harmonized. It has not been monitored. So that
isn't that an issue for security agencies?
No. I want to put a point on that.
Because really, you said they are international non-governmental bodies.
They are money. No, you don't look at this thing from the perspective of, a Red Cross in next door.
Okay.
You don't look at it from the standpoint of Red Cross in next door. For example, now, I can tell you that I know of a state in the northern part of this country that 3 different countries, 3 economic tigers, are doing little things like hand pump. In one community, hand pump, how much is hand pump? And it is not there in the database, in the data bank of the National Planning Commission. They are not even aware. There are a whole lot of it like that. And I said here, and repeatedly too, that the intention is to use that project to put as a valve and conduct demographic intelligence, which is not for the interest of this country. You also have situations, for example, you hear some people come and sit here or stay with us at our idle moment and begin to talk about transparency, talk about this issue of CSOs, NGOs, and CBOs. We have regulations in this country. It has nothing to do with the security. And it clearly says, if you and I, we agree that Nigeria is our country, we must protect and preserve it. There are things that are expected of us to do. So we must create the change in us we want to see in the society. A lot of people, by karma, per se of karma, they are expected to do disclosures. How many of them are able to disclose this assistance they receive?
Yeah, but it's not for the... what it really is whether it's an issue for Parliament.
I think, one thing I would say...
Harmonization of receipts of aid.
Yeah, and some of the things that probably could also be said to be maybe exceptions.
Yeah, all the international NGOs, all the international NGOs are expected to be registered with the National Planning Commission anyway. So I would expect that if you have major concerns, that you should address those to National Planning Commission. It will be part of your oversight.
No,
but I'm going somewhere.
No, excuse me. Let me give you an information there. I said here when we started that we are doing engagement on a couple of these concerns. I said so. That is not something you go on media trial or you begin to. I said so in the beginning. So this engagement is
part of that.
Yes, in various ways.
Now, there's a major issue that you raise at the very bottom of the article on the leadership newspaper that I read, where you say that about well over 90% of the procurements are bought from abroad and not...
Yeah, I was actually coming to that.
I have to explain that many of the procurements of the development partners is through competitive tendering process. And if Nigerian companies are not going to tender aggressively as those foreign companies that are going to come you can turn around and stop the process. And if you can't, then you can join them.
Who can turn around to stop it? Parliament or the...
No, when you see the advert, they go on competitive international tendering and tender internationally. And then they have to do those, just like our own procurement laws have to take their course. But I know that in the case of EU and in the case of some PMUs, project management units, things like TradeCom and BISCLIM and all those, they use framework contractors. Now, what that is some kind of pre-selection exercise that they do, and then they select a panel of about 5 providers in particular areas, those open tendering, but they select about 5 on each area, like ICT, 5 in trade, and over a period of 3 to 4 years, when the life of that program, and then they procure through those pre-selected panel. So that is for PMUs, but in many other cases, and the small money registered to about 200,000 euros each, But in by and large, the other things go to open competitive tendering, and we have to learn to encourage our people to bid. Or do we stand a chance?
Do we stand a chance?
We do.
Where you say in a way open tendering? You pitch Nigerian companies against.
We have all these big companies in Nigeria.
Because you also raised an issue which I also probably like to draw from personal experience there. I think it was in the countdown to the 2007 presidential elections when the AIT wanted to organize a presidential election. We had this arrangement with one of the... do you have idea they be multilateral or...
Bilateral.
Okay. One of them, without necessarily discussing it, we had an agreement with one of them to spend, I think, $30,000 to assist us. Mm-hmm. Without us knowing it, they brought in experts, a court, from the United States of America to come and inspect the venue of the presidential debate, how we have fixed things and all of that. Brought in 2 or 3 experts, which they paid for from the money they had already pledged to us, from out of the $30,000.
But you have to read the agreement. You have to read the agreement.
Before you even see the agreement, all of these have been. The point I'm making is that before you knew it, close to $10,000 of the so-called assistance had already been spent on our behalf. And at the end of the day, the experts came, then they looked around and said, "Oh, you have done very well," and left. But
let me give you.
I'm just not trying to.
Let me put this thing on the table. Maybe Prof will be able to, in addressing it, assist us. For example, he mentioned May and Becker and maybe some other big giant pharmaceutical companies like Visa and all that. May and Becker, for example, recently commissioned a very massive plant in Lagos, which, of course, if fully utilized, it will also help downstream, and the issue of unemployment and all that will at least be attended to. Now, you are now wanting to assist Nigeria with anti-malarial drugs. That NAFDAC, a statutory institution recognized the world over as being capable and competent, has now certified anti-malarial drugs of May and Becker and Visa or whatever. And that's what you and I were taking in this country. And now they want to assist us with anti-malarial drugs. And Prof is letting me understand, if I'm not misunderstanding him, that it's because we lack capacity to go into international bidding. That is why
you have to report the drugs from India.
Yes, you have to source the drugs in India. Because that's where it's sounding. Because no,
I could never say
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but the capacity.
What I'm trying to say is that you are talking about capacity. If an organization, you have Visa, you have EMZO, you have May and Becker, with the capacity to do these things, and you and I, that is the anti-malarial drugs we take every day.
Okay. Why don't you, if you are going to do business, why don't you limit it to Nigerian companies?
I don't think that would be allowed to limit it to Nigerian companies. It is the international competitive bidding process. You can have the best companies,
and then half of the money returns back to the owner.
Not really. The issue is this.
The children are dying.
You can have the best companies, you can have the best drugs for malaria. You have to come into an open competitive tendering process. If you don't get into that process, you don't get a chance. Julius Berger is one of the best in the country, but they don't win every contract. First, you have to tender, you have to form the correct alliance, and then get a chance.
In that anti-malarial drug, the component of the contract which was given to May and Becker was not beyond 50,000. I mean, sorry, 50 million. Was not beyond 50 million. Why were they even given it?
Let me explain to you,
didn't
please.
have capacity.
You can either be a lead tender, you can lead the tender, or be in the consortium. And within the consortium, you negotiate your position. You might be the one supplying 100% of the drugs, and then the lead company that won the contract may deal with the administration and management.
We can do better in this thing.
Yeah, actually, we are supposed to be rounding up now. We are out of time. But my worry really is the way the NGOs in Nigeria are interpreting what we are trying to do. Some of them think that we are trying to just snuff life out of them, block their lifelines. If an international NGO is giving money to a civil society body in Nigeria, what problem should Parliament have with that?
Yeah, Benga, you see,
why should it be this?
Benga, I can tell you that at a certain stage, at a certain level of the life of a man, you should be able to outgrown what should be called risk. At a certain stage, you don't even know what risk is in your life, so you go ahead to do what you know is right without bothering yourself on what risk or dangers are. Now, if Benga, I keep using you as an example. Now, professor is sending money to you, and you are a corporate citizen in Nigeria, and you receive that money maybe for the Benga initiative. The intention of Benga is to use this money and promote governance practice. And professor keeps sending that money to you. And under the law in which you are incorporated, you have an obligation to disclose. And you are not doing that. This disclosure is a product. Is a product of the Act of Parliament.
Okay.
And when it is in breach,
Chief.
Okay.
You have freedom of. Okay, my honorable. You have freedom of. You have all the legal instruments. You have the Freedom of Information Act. You can demand under those acts.
Okay.
You have whistleblowing policy. You have audit requirements. You have to file your account, statutory account every year. You have national planning to try to. We have all these instruments that we need.
Professor, beyond those,
we have to go now.
Okay. Maybe you have to schedule another round table.
Yes, but let's end this one first. Should we end this one now?
Well, on a note, telling you thank you, but we can do better.
All right.
But on the part of the House, sincerely speaking, we have to really appreciate the level of sacrifice and the commitment of the present leadership and members of the House in the 7th Assembly to really up the ante in governance practice.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. We call him the Dean because he's the Dean of the initiative. The initiative is a group of some highly cerebral members of the House. It's been there since the 5th Assembly?
No,
since the 5th Assembly up until now, and he's still the Dean. Honorable SMA Ibo, he is Chairman House Committee on Donor Agencies and Civil Society. Thank you so very much. We appreciate your time. He's been joined on the program by Professor Ken Ife. Professor Ken Ife is of Africa Business Roundtable. He is a consultant to ECOWAS, DFID, and the World Bank. Thank you so very much, Paul.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate your time. All right, that's the program this morning. When we come back tomorrow, be sure that we are going to deepen the cause of democracy further. My name is Benga Aruleba. I'll see you.
The Busy Latino Show, BOS International.
I think the congregation tonight should be a period for celebration of the incoming, the end of the legal year, the beginning of the legal year. There is a period also for sober reflection.
We have signed into law several legislations whose implementation will help us provide the service delivery that you expect of us and raise the standard of life.
The Busy Latino Show, BOS International.
I'll give you all the finest things in life. You are the angel of my life, the love of my life. I love my baby, that's my baby. I will treat my baby right.
Words all over the world have made the Busy Latino Show, BOS International, the first choice on their TV dials every week. The Busy Latino Show, BOS International. Time out with TA. It's also a party.
Look, see, I know they get no longer, so I don't want friendship way longer. With me today, tomorrow I'm stronger.
Time out with TA. It's the variety comedy show everyone is talking about. Catch your favorite celebrity on Wine with TA. It's refreshing, revealing, and ridiculously hilarious.
Stay with me, dear woman, cause you love me, I will be your...
Time out with TA.
The new month of a new year usually comes with a lot of challenges for so many people. Nigerians are not left behind.
Get the most current updates and business around the globe on The Money Show.
If you look at Nigeria and our people, a lot of people actually plan for the year from January up to December.
His word. He said, "Let there be light," and the word was illuminated. He spoke through his prophets. Believe the word of God, and ye shall be established. Believe his prophets, and you shall prosper. We still have the prophets. Here comes another moment of prophetic declarations, the word from the divine throne. Destiny encounter. Be blessed as you walk.
It's a beautiful day, a day of glory, in another moment to encounter the Almighty. Welcome to Destiny Encounter. I am Pastor Peter.
Independent television.
elements as contained in this must be thoroughly investigated, but not play politics with the issues of wages.
Hello and thanks for staying with us on Africa Independent Television, AIT. This is Inside the Parliament, the program that brings you reports, analysis and of course interviews being deliberated at the National Assembly. I'm Elgusa Igumbo. The Nigerian Senate took a break from plenary last weekend, so not much was done, but the Green Chamber was full of activities both at the committee level and at plenary. The public hearing on the capital market by the House of Representatives continued Monday with the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Stock Exchange, NSE, Oscar Onyema, and the Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Aruma Ote, made presentations. It was another can of worms as characteristic of other sector probes by the National Assembly, as Ote reeled heart-rending sharp financial practices, flagrant disregard for the rules by the players, corporate misgovernance and ineffective supervision by those whose responsibility it is to do so, leading to the near collapse of the capital market between 2005 and 2010. And of course, the lower legislative house approved 62 recommendations of each other committee which looked into the fuel subsidy regime. Highlights of the committee's report is a recommendation calling on the auditor of the Federation to audit the accounts of the NNPC to determine its solvency. You'll also be hearing about this and more in our news report segments. We shall also be taking you to the National Assembly to bring you happenings in the Senate. But for now, we'll take a short break and come back with the program proper. Stay with us.
So the autonomy of the local government is very vital and very important, and we need to support this bill so that local government, hence therefore, based on my simple analogy of a foundation of a building, I so support. Not play politics with issues of wages and taxes.
Be now read the second time, say aye. Again, say aye.
Now beginning with our news reports, the Securities and Exchange Commission SEC says it is spearheading efforts to track down 440 wonder banks which have defrauded unsuspecting Nigerians of 106 billion naira. The Director General of the Commission, Aruma Ote, revealed this at the resumed House of Representatives public hearing on the near collapse of Nigeria's capital markets. She told the investigating committee that SEC is also spearheading efforts to track down and bring to book the operators of the scam bank. AIT Sholakin Sonia reports.
The Security and Exchange Commission's Director General told the committee that the Commission has obtained court orders to wind up the identified outfits, while promoters of the schemes have been handed over to relevant enforcement agencies for criminal prosecution. But that is not all there is to the abuses that led to the near collapse of Nigeria's capital market between 2006 and 2010. We saw its capitalization nosedive from 124 trillion naira in 2008 to 4.99 trillion naira in 2010.
For instance, the Nigerian Stock Exchange bought a yacht, or should I say boat, for 37 million naira and wrote down the book value within 1 year by recognizing it in its books as a gift presented during its 2008 Long Service Award. Yet, there are no records of the beneficiary. The Stock Exchange also spent 186 million naira on 165 Rolex wristwatches as gifts for awardees, out of which only 73 were actually presented to the awardees.
On the investor apathy in the market, OT attributed this to abuses perpetrated by some financial institutions as responsible.
In Finbank, between August of 2006 and December 2008, the executive team of Finbank engaged 6 law firms to incorporate 95 companies and transferred more than 25 billion naira of depositors' funds to 9 of these companies and used those funds to purchase 2.8 billion units of its own shares.
However, all hopes are not lost, as the Nigerian Stock Exchange, in conjunction with the Securities and Exchange Commission, have taken measures to revamp the market.
We will come up with an aggressive marketing effort to attract new companies into the marketplace. We're talking to about 550 companies or more, trying to make sure that we sell the value proposition for them to come to the market.
With such transformation initiatives, the expectations of stakeholders is that the Nigeria capital market will bounce back stronger to galvanize the country's economic development. Shola Akinsoya, AIT News, Abuja.
Nigeria's House of Representatives has summoned the National Security Advisor and all service chiefs on the way forward to the incessant bombing and insecurity in the country. The lawmakers took the decision while deliberating on a motion by Ali Yakub on the attack in Potiskum Castle Market that left over 100 people dead. AIT's Chukwemeka Gawike tells us more.
Yakub, who sponsored the motion, informed the House that Potiskum is one of the 15 local governments under the state of emergency, and it is amazing that such attack will be launched twice in a day without any action from the security operatives.
The security operatives are well equipped, they have all the funds, and yet several instances happen without any solution. So I continue to wonder, what are these people doing? They kept on mounting roadblock, open your boot, check, and yet these people find their way and commit crimes. If the citizens are willing to say, okay, these people have to be reported and vital information are given to security agencies in order to get them, of course, it is, it will be very, very good on the part of the people to assist the security agencies.
In another development, the House has advised the Nigerian journalists not to be intimidated by the threat of bomb attack on some media houses in the country. The lawmakers made a statement in solidarity with journalists while marking this year's World Press Freedom Day.
Now that the press is being attacked by the miscreants, by the so-called terrorists, I wonder how they'll be celebrating their freedom or how they'll be doing their work free. So we feel for them too, we feel for the press.
They moved from attacking the soldiers to the civilians and now to the media, which is the last weapon for the ordinary man. And if this thing is allowed to go beyond these points, maybe it will consume Nigeria.
They shouldn't allow this to weaken them. Rather, it should be a strength to their activities. Let them continue to do what they are doing.
The House has also approved the second reading of bill seeking for the establishment of 9 new universities in the country. The bill has been forwarded to the Committee on Education for more legislative work.
Staying with the lower legislative chamber, where it has called on the Auditor General of the Federation to audit within the next 3 months the accounts of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, that's the NNPC, to determine its solvency. The House also wants the NNPC to refund to the National Treasury the sum of 85 billion naira over withdrawals from its accounts within 90 days. The decisions form part of the 62 recommendations of the ad hoc committee of the House, which investigated the implementation of the fuel subsidy scheme. AIT's Chukwemeka Gawike reports that the House adopted all the 62 recommendations after 2 days of debate.
The adoption of the 62 recommendation of the Farouk Lawan-led committee, which probed the management of the fuel subsidy scheme, followed 2 days of debate at plenary. In adopting the recommendations, several amendments were proposed by the lawmakers. The 5th amendment in the report was forced to be amended. Samson Osage, who described the recommendation as open-ended, proposed an amendment praying that the House direct the auditing of NNPC by the Auditor General of the Federation within 3 months.
It's open-ended in that it did not give a time frame within which such audits and reports should be sent back. Given the volume of things discovered with the NNPC, we cannot leave a recommendation as this to be open-ended. I am suggesting that the audit be conducted within 3 months and report back to the House through the Public Accounts Committee.
Following a motion by Abike Dabiri, the House also amended Recommendation 8, directing that the NNPC refund 25 billion naira to the Treasury within 3 months. After several comments by lawmakers, Recommendation 42, which asked that the Accountant General of the Federation be investigated and prosecuted for authorizing the payment of 999 million naira 128 times within 24 hours on 12th and 13th January 2009, was amended, following a motion by the chairman of the Subsidy Probe Committee. The House thereafter amended the recommendation, which proposed that officials of the Petroleum Product Pricing Regulatory Authority are culpable in the irregular payment of 999 million naira 128 times within 24 hours.
Since the CBN, the Office of the Accountant General, and the TPPRA had admitted that they are the account holders, then we need to replace the Office of the Accountant General with the PPPRA, because they have come out to admit, and CBN has admitted they are the ones responsible for this payment. But it needs to be further investigated, because it's still curious for that kind of payment to be done 111 times.
It will be proper for us not to take any adventurous step. It will be better for us, my honorable colleagues, to ask the committee, since they have a window of 2 weeks. First, central banks that have written the committee, that have furnished them with the payments and have acknowledged so, that it will find for us who benefited from this payment and for what purpose these payments have been made. If they have been fraudulently procured, it will be established. If there is any law that has been breached by payment of 99 million, it will be established.
In his remark at the end of the debate, Deputy Speaker Emeka Ihedion said the work of the ad hoc committee has been extended by 2 weeks to allow the 17 companies which failed to appear before the committee to do so in the interest of fair hearing. The House will now forward the resolution containing all the recommendations to President Goodluck Jonathan for implementation.
Still on the fuel subsidy probe report, the House of Representatives is to criminalize extra budgetary expenditure by government officials. This follows the adoption of Recommendation 43 of the reports of the Farouk Lawan Committee, which probed the fuel subsidy regime in Nigeria.
Was the recommendation, which seeks a law to criminalize extra budgetary expenditures by government officials. The legislators argued that the offense is already covered by laws against theft, while others says that there is need for clarity through a unique law targeted at such offenses.
If you take money belonging to Nigeria without the consent of the parliament that represent the people that appropriate, you have stolen that money. Therefore, you can be charged for a criminal offense called theft. The only sanction that we possibly have against extra budgetary expenditure is to move it against the chief executive by way of impeachment. But of course we know that that option is hardly exercisable, and it does not send the necessary signals to other operators of the budget across board. For us, I think if we harmonize
both the provisions of the Constitution on this subject and even the splinters of other provisions in other legislation for the purpose of having a legal instrument with ample provisions on issues of budget and extra budgetary expenditure. We have nothing to lose as a National Assembly.
After all the arguments, the House adopted the recommendation requiring it to enact a law criminalizing extra budgetary expenditure.
The essence of this is that this expenditure is shortchanging other arms of government. It's also shortchanging the other federative units. The executive cannot just continue, that is the federal government, cannot continue to spend any available money in its care. And that is the question I kept on raising, that the issue of the Accountant General of the Federation being the same Accountant General for the federal government is wrong. And we are also, of course, bringing up a bill to that. As far as I'm concerned, there must be a separate entity, a separate office administering the Federation account. When we do have that, we will not be having this problem.
It's now a habit for the MDAs to outstrip the budget, and sometimes without recourse to the National Assembly, and it's very worrisome. This is our primary role as legislators, and we take it very seriously. When the people, the MDAs on the frolic of their own, take such responsibilities, then it's very worrisome. So there's a need to add bite to what already provided for, so that people would, serious warning will be sent to people who want to commit such atrocity the next time.
Before the debate on the report commenced, Speaker Aminu Tambuwa charged the members to be passionate and warning that they were fighting against entrenched interests who also fight dirty. The Farouk Lawan committee sat for 3 weeks and submitted its support to the House on April 18th.
And the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Aminu Tambuwal, says the lower legislative chamber will follow up on the report of the fuel subsidy regime probe to ensure its implementation by the executive. Tambuwal, who spoke while receiving leaders of the Nigeria Labour Congress, also gave an assurance that the Parliament will not take away what the Nigerian Constitution guarantees its citizens. AIT's Chukwemeka Gwawike reports.
While reacting to the demand of Labour leaders who visited him in his office to congratulate members of the Nigerian House of Representatives on the work of the committee that investigated the subsidy regime, Labour has demanded that the report be taken to its logical conclusion, while also asking the House to make sure that the sovereignty of Nigerian people is not trampled upon through the proposed Labour amendment bill in the Nigerian Senate.
One of the aides in the presidency was saying that the report of the House and the probe lacks credibility. It lacks credibility because only some individuals were focused on and some other individuals were not mentioned. I said to myself, aha, good. If the executive knows some other individuals that ought to have been brought up in this report, now we'll watch and ask them to come up with those people.
The Speaker Aminu Tambuwa assured that the House will continue to work for the unity of the country and to do those things that will improve the development of Nigeria.
And the target, obviously, is for us to have an improved country where you have infrastructure, where you have people living a meaningful life. We go to the same market, we all go to the same schools, and therefore we better, the earlier we improve on them, the better for everybody.
On the Boko Haram issue, the Speaker called on religious leaders to be more conscious in what they say, as the violence has nothing to do with religion.
No leader worth his salt would be happy seeing that people are being maimed, people are being killed, no matter the religion either profess or practice. And in any case, I know that Islam and Christianity never encourage violence.
At plenary, a bill to amend the Public Procurement Act scheduled second reading and has been referred to the Committee on Public Procurement for more legislative inputs.
House of Representatives has set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the SIM card registration exercise carried out by the National Communications Commission. The resolution followed a motion by Abdulrahman Tarib praying the House to condemn the sale of registered SIM cards in the open market. Again, the artist Chukwemeka Agwawike proposed.
Debate on the motion on the need to condemn the sales of registered SIM cards in Nigeria coincided with a letter from the President requesting the House of Representatives to approve the budget of the Nigerian Communication Commission for the 2012 fiscal year. The lawmaker says unless the NCC accounts for over 6 billion naira approved for it to register SIM cards in the country, the budget will not see the light of the day.
And we also expect that while these SIM cards have been going on freely, the NCC, through the amount of money it has, should have a mechanism to at least put a system that can arrest those who are doing these things on the street. To the best of my knowledge, as I'm talking to you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, that is not done. If you go to some of these places I'm talking about, you will still see these SIM cards being sold.
It is the responsibility of NCC to ensure that this thing does not happen. And NCC should be held liable and accountable for the misuse of 6 billion naira voted for it to do a seamless and fraud-free registration of SIM cards. They owe the Nigerian people apology and they owe us explanation. It is just not about carrying out investigation. People should be held accountable when they misuse Nigeria's money. This is so absurd, it's not acceptable. We labored in vain and approved 6 billion, and today this is what we are getting from it.
I just want to stress the fact that this is fraudulent, and until NCC accounts for that 6 billion naira, not one kobo should be given to them. Our problem today in Nigeria, Mr. Speaker, is that there's no more compassion in governance. It's all about greed, greed, greed. Money, money, money. Corruption, corruption, corruption. Grab, grab, grab. And this House, as I've done before, must teach NCC a lesson.
The legislators noted that the essence of spending billions of naira to register SIM cards across the country is to control criminal use of the cards. They said if the current situation whereby registered SIM cards are being sold in street corners, it will negate the current effort to get true identity of mobile phone users in Nigeria.
The best way is for NCC to make sure there will be registered outlets where people can buy this SIM card. But if anybody goes to the street and obtains a SIM card, these people, these service providers are there to make money at the expense of the security of the nation. We must make sure, the committee of the House must make sure the NCC lives to its responsibility by ensuring that only registered sales outlets are allowed to sell SIM cards. We need to now mandate the committee to go into that money, how it was expended. Because to ask that 6 billion naira being used for that very purpose, there is an indication that people were going to be sent to all the villages, the remote villages. And that was the cost that was actually computed that amounted to that huge sum of money. So, Mr. Speaker, I think the importance of this very motion is to make sure that the original concept of registering SIM card will now come back. That is the intent, will now come back to it. So whatever investigation that is going to be done on account of this very motion must take into consideration the original intent of registering SIM cards. Today, you have a lot of kidnappings, a lot of bodies and the rest of them going on. These are coordinated through phone calls and the rest of them.
In another development, a bill to amend an inland shipping cabotage act scaled second reading. The bill has been referred to the House Committee on Marine Transport for further legislative action.
The Nigerian Senate has directed its Committee on National Planning to investigate the effectiveness of poverty reduction interventions in the country. During a debate on the motion, senators expressed concern that a large number of Nigerian families have remained poor in spite of the several poverty eradication initiatives. AIT Sehidu Onyago reports that the Senate has also ordered an investigation into the deteriorating service rendered by Global System for Mobile Telecommunications as the GSM providers.
Tumbi ACN Ekiti North, in a motion co-sponsored by 36 other senators, lamented what he termed the worsening state in the living standards of most Nigerian families.
Worried that if unchecked, the grinding poverty, unemployment, job loss, and growing inequality and widening gap between the rich and the poor could further worsen social and political unrest in Nigeria.
The senators were particularly disturbed that the previous and ongoing efforts to address poverty in the country seem not to have recorded significant progress.
We must stress it out that the women are 70%